for strikeouts in a game. 20.
Swung on and driven to deep left. And it's hard. Nice for Yankees win. Yankees win. Bernie Williams homers deep in the left field seat to lead off the 11th inning at a 1-run finish. And the Yankees beat the Orioles 5-4 to win Game 1 of the American League Championship Series. Burn, baby, burn. He's done it again.
Deep left. There it goes. Staring into history. He's done it. He has done it. 62. Aaron Judge is the American League single-season home run leader. The AL King. Case closed.
Baseball fans, for Dave, I'm Jeremy Laracuente, and we are here once again bringing you our continuation of our series, The State of the Franchise. From championship glory to rebuilding years, every team has a story, and the story that we're discussing today is an interesting one with the St. Louis Cardinals, and we bring on from Cardinals Talk, Joe Ross. What's going on, Joe?
Doing? I'm doing great.
All right. So obviously this is a different kind of season for Cardinals fans. But as we begin, we want to take a bit of a retrospective and kind of get your thoughts on the 2024 campaign, kind of gut reaction.
Yeah, gut reaction. I mean, gosh, what a frustrating back half of the season. I mean, we got really hot kind of around the deadline, and I think everybody was hoping, let's cash in, let's go for it. And in some ways they did. They made some moves, and seemingly everything went downhill post trade deadline. It was like everything that could go wrong went wrong with the team. So, it's funny looking, I know we're talking about 2024, but in many ways, 2024 looks a lot like 2025. There haven't been tons of moves made. There haven't been. So I think there's a lot of fans that are like, hey, this could be another, 500 team in the mix, or the back half of fans that are like, this could be the second half of the season for a full season. So obviously, whenever you're looking at a Cardinals season and it doesn't end with a deep postseason run, it's disappointing. And making the playoffs is not, the standard in St. Louis, but there were little wins. When you look at Mason Wynn, when you look at Andre Palante, I think there's are definitely things to look forward to in 2025, but a lot of question marks for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you alluded to, there really weren't many moves made. A couple of, waiver pickups, kind of a small trade. Are there any players that are kind of standing out to you in some of those minor league signings or anything like that for this 2025 team?
No, I think, Michael Helm, right? That was our big offseason move. The Cardinal fans know, and they joke around on Twitter a lot. Our GM famously says that getting this player back is like a trade. Nolan Arenado coming back kind of feels like that. Or I don't think anybody was expecting him to return to St. Louis this year. But Michael Hellman was really the only guy that we got in the offseason that was a notable name. I think really what we're looking forward to the most is will some of the young guys come up and make their debuts in St. Louis? And like it or not, when Mozeliak says, hey, that's like an acquisition, that is something that we get to look forward to. I think that's probably the biggest thing that we're looking forward to. Will a Tink Hentz join St. Louis? Will JJ join St. Louis at some point this season? Is kind of those players that we're watching right now.
Yeah. Dave and I are Yankee fans, and we tend to hear that a lot from Brian Cashman. So him and Mozeliak definitely were trained by the same kind of tactics in terms of saying things without actually saying anything meaningful, for sure.
Well, you guys got Goldie, so take good care of him. He's a great. I mean, seeing Goldie in the New York pinstripes, he looks like 1950s Yankees. Like he's just like,
He
yeah,
does.
this kind of works. This fits.
I mean, Paul Goldschmidt would have been great had we got him straight from the Diamondbacks. I mean, I feel like you guys in St. Louis got to enjoy his prime years, and now we're getting whatever was left over. But I mean, unfortunately, with Anthony Rizzo's head injury a year ago, to the broken forearm, to the back, to everything else, I consider it an upgrade. And the fact that he's now hitting in a hitters friendly ballpark in Yankee Stadium versus Busch Stadium, which is not very hitters friendly, I can only imagine his offensive numbers are just going to double. Unfortunately, he is 37 years old. I mean, he's a year younger than me, but I'll take it for 1 year at $12.5 million. Why not roll the dice, see what happens?
The leadership alone, I think, is worth it at that
Absolutely.
price. And I mean, if you guys can go look at his numbers, he was getting back on track towards the end of the year.
Mhm.
And I know it's a different kind of pressure in New York, but I would expect him to have a bounce back year, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. And you kind of touched on one of the other players that I wanted to discuss with you in terms of Nolan Arenado. It was not a player that was expected to be back. When Mozeliak comes out and just blatantly says, yeah, we're trading him, and then he doesn't get traded, what's kind of the feeling around, the Cardinals fan base with that?
Yeah, one of the fans on the backfields today screamed out at Nolan, something to the effect of, Nolan, we appreciate you. What you're doing is notable. Like, thank you. And I think that's the sentiment of a lot of fans that I interact with, at least on socials, is like, why wouldn't we be happy that he's back? I think like if the organization really committed to a youth movement like they said they were going to, and they didn't, then that would be another thing. Like, why is Nolan still here? He's clogging things up. But when you look at the rotation, like I'm way more concerned about the rotation than I am Nolan Arenado at third base. So it's like, as a fan, I don't really know what's happening. I know what they've said, but what they've done is actually quite different. So, I mean, in many ways, it's like, run it back. Here we go. And so I still think there's a chance Nolan Arenado starts the season on a different team than the Cardinals. I think if a Max Muncy goes down, if Jazz goes down in New York, I think both of those teams are calling the Cardinals saying, what's the price? But as of now, he's a Cardinal, and as a fan who owns his jersey, I'm not mad about it.
Well, in the case of Arenado, the reason why, I mean, you can attest to this more than anybody. He's got a partial no trade clause, so he's literally like dictating what teams he can and can't go to. It's not that the Cardinals can just trade him to the Athletics if they wanted to. But and another thing that's holding it up is the amount of money that he's still owed. And I believe the Rockies are the ones that gave him the contract, and then Colorado traded him to you guys, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, that's a lot of money still owed to a guy that's in his late 30s. So, and that's another obstacle, which, especially for the Yankees, Brian Cashman is like holding Hal's pocket where this is concerned, because Hal wants to act like he's running the Pittsburgh Pirates and is screaming poverty when you go and make $6 billion last year in revenue. I don't want to hear it. If they need a third baseman, they keep saying, well, the hole's at second. It's like, no, move Jazz back where he belongs. And, they could have signed Bregman for the same amount of money that Boston gave him. They chose not to for whatever reason. But, it's those two obstacles with Arenado. It's the money and it's the no trade clause. And I'll even throw a third one in. His age is really driving this bus.
Yeah, lack of production last year, right? I think like when you look back at some of the trades last year, I think a really good comp would be when the Padres acquired Luis Ariz. Like just a random day, I think in May or early June, it was like so random. It was like, what? Like the batting champion just got traded to the Padres. I think it could be something like that, just depending on how Nolan starts the season, right?
Yeah.
If he comes out hot and he's swinging hot, and again, a third baseman goes down somewhere for a team that feels like they can win it, then the price goes up for the Cardinals. So I at this point, like for the Cardinals, it makes more sense to hold on to him until a team gets to a desperate place. And
we
they
see
can
those
have a
things
little bit more
happen.
leverage.
Yeah, and we see those things happen all the time in spring training for sure.
His contract is weird as hell, right?
Mhm.
$570,000 in 2021. Then it jumps to 2 opt-outs in 22 and 23. He was paid $23.4 million in 22, $13 million in 23. He got paid $24 million last year. He's owed $21 million this year, and then $16 and $15 million.
Yeah,
No, what I was saying is like it's the weirdest contract I've ever seen ever, because like it just goes dit, 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 instead of, you know, going down as the years age out, like Giancarlo Stanton's contract does, and like Aaron Judge's contract. It's just, I don't know. To me, it's just really strange the way they structured the whole thing.
Yeah, but like at the same time, when you look at the Bregman deal and his production on the field, and then you look at some of the numbers that Arenado has put up, even in a down year at Busch Stadium, as like, well, the value's there. You can't say it's not there. Like for a vet, he's still very, very good defensively. I mean, he wasn't bad offensively.
No.
Right.
Compared to the rest of the comps at third base, there's only so many elite offensive third basemen to go around. I do think there's tremendous value with Nolan Arenado and trading for Nolan Arenado at this point.
No, I agree. Michael K on his Michael K show had broached that subject. You know, people saying about being down on Arenado, and especially, you know, a lot of conversation amongst Yankee fans is that they don't want him. He's old. He's washed up. But when you look at the numbers that he put up last year and what was, quote, you know, a down season, 272, 16 home runs, I think like 70 something RBIs, and we're not getting that production from a platoon of DJ LeMahieu and Oswaldo Cabrera. So it's like, this is still a player that, while he may not be the MVP level, right, which I still think he can get back to, because it was just a couple of seasons ago that he finished third in the MVP race in the NL. But even if he doesn't get back to that level and he maintains what he did in 24 with those kind of numbers, he's still going to be amongst the top 10 at that position. You know, on MLB Network's top 10 right now series, he finished in the top 10. And that was with having a down year, more heavily weighted. So I think that there's, you know, while everybody is kind of down on the thought of Arenado, to me, he's still a monster of a player.
I don't think it's necessarily his numbers. I think it's the way he's being perceived, right? When he was in Colorado, he was like, I'm committed to being here. He wanted the big contract. He wanted to stay in Colorado. 2 or 3 years into it, I want to be traded. What do? They go and trade him to St. Louis. He's there for a few years. Nah, I want to be traded. Or so it seemed to be. Like they promised they were going to build a team around him. And they didn't do that in St. Louis for whatever financial constraints there are. Now, I think it's just the way he's being perceived in a negative light of him saying now twice after getting the big deal, he wanted to stay one place, then demands a trade, gets traded to another. He goes, you know what? Nah, this isn't working out for me. Now I want out of here. Or the organization saying they want to trade him out of here.
And I think a lot of Cardinals fans too, at the end of last season, they did start asking the question, is Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt just able to win? I think there's something to be said about guys that lose their entire careers, right? Like Goldie in Arizona and Goldie in St. Louis, elite player, MVP, did not win. Simply, you just can't. And it's hard to put blame on one guy or two guys, but at the same time, you're going to get to the end of your career and you're going to have a World Series ring or you're not. Like you guys as Yankee fans should know more than anything.
We're still waiting. It's been a long 15 years.
It's been a long time. Yeah, well, we're not too far behind you in 2011. But
well, at least you've won a World Series in the last decade.
So, we haven't. 2011. That was it.
Well, I mean, 3 years, 2 years, 2 or 3 years after we did. So whatever.
Yeah.
Still more recent.
Yeah. I also think that when it comes to, you know, what you were saying about Arenado, Dave, I think that he's always been committed to the same thing, and that's winning. Colorado was in the playoffs. They were pushing. They gave him this big contract extension. And then they immediately regretted it because they knew we're not really trying to be an organization that pushes to win. And that's why they tried to trade him out. St. Louis got him under the guise of the same thing, a team that was committed to winning, a team that was going to be putting a winning product on the field year in and year out. He opts back in after, they were in that kind of direction, and then they pivoted. They fell out of contention. And now, once again, he's looking for the same thing that he's always looked for, and that's to be on a winner. So I think that kind of thought process from a player like that has that winning drive, that has that winning type of mentality of wanting to win is something to be said for. And I think that, that can be infectious to a team that is trying to win. But in a team like the Cardinals right now that is kind of looking towards rebuilding, then it's not worth the same thing in that clubhouse.
Right. I agree.
Now, as we look at some of those injury concerns for St. Louis, Sonny Gray, Jojo Romero, what are some of the big news points in terms of injuries for the Cardinals?
I don't think the Cardinals have like anything outside of the ordinary as far as, huge major DL stints to start, at least of now. I think the biggest question that the Cardinals have is how will Wilson Contreras' health translate to first base? He only played in 84 games last year. Now, a part of that reason was the team wasn't very good coming on the back end of the season. But, he's added 15 pounds. I think moving to first base is going to be less taxing on his body. I think moving to first base should bring even more to his offensive ability. And so that's the big question mark. Obviously, getting Sonny Gray back for an entire season rather than a fraction of a season last year would be huge. But the Cardinals still have a really good bullpen. That's one thing they do have going for them. I mean, when you get down to the 7th, 8th, and 9th, and you got to face JoJo and you got to face Ryan, it's like there's a lot of guys that don't want to face those guys. So if the team can stay healthy and you get a Lars Nootbaar healthy for the whole season, and you get a Wilson Contreras, and you get even a Nolan Gorman that can turn the page and take that next step, it's like, why can't they win a really crappy NL Central? It's not a great division, and maybe that's what the Cardinals are thinking.
Now, as we look towards this 2025 team, who do you believe, Joe, is the X factor for the Cardinals' success, and what does that success look like?
Yeah, I think it would be really easy to answer this question with Mason Wynn. I think it would be really easy to answer this question with Wilson Contreras. But I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach. A guy that I really want to see take the next step this year is Lars Nootbaar. He got a ton of publicity during the World Baseball Classic. He is a fan favorite. We love him. But at the end of the day, you got to produce. And I don't think he ended up being the leadoff hitter that a lot of fans thought he was going to be. I don't think he ended up being the middle of the lineup guy that a lot of fans thought he would be, and the guy that honestly the Cardinals needed him to be last year. He has had trouble staying on the field and staying healthy. And when he's there, it's great and it's fun. But when he's not, it's like, dude, this is rough. Like, he can only roll over and ground out so many times. So I would say like Lars Nootbaar almost has that Dexter Fowler, you go, we go kind of mantra to him. And when he's on, he does bring a different energy to the team. But when he's off, man, it just feels like the whole lineup is slumping and nobody can hit. I mean, Nolan too. If the Cardinals are going to play competitive baseball, and if the Cardinals are going to try and win the NL Central this year, he obviously has to produce. I think from the mound perspective, Andre Palante is a guy that I honestly look at as a 3 on this team. I think Sonny Gray is the obvious one, but then you kind of get into 2 through 5 as a lot of the same characters. Michaelis is definitely not the same guy anymore, and so Andre Palante, again, another fan favorite that we're really looking forward to seeing. Okay, as a second year in the rotation, what can you do? What can you bring?
No, for sure. In my preparation, kind of leading into this series, my X factor was John Mozeliak himself. I think that what he does with this team, in the next coming couple of weeks and the early part of the season, and most importantly at the trade deadline, is really going to dictate the future of this organization. What he gets back for Nolan Arenado, what he ends up doing with Ryan Helsley, I think is going to be very important for the future of this team. So to me, he's kind of the X factor, and it's a little bit, of a different take than, an on-field type player or a pitcher, but it in the direction of this franchise, he's the guy kind of pulling the strings and running the show. So to me, he's kind of the X factor of what happens with Cardinals baseball in 2025 and beyond.
Yeah, and if I can even take it a step further, I would say it's the DeWitts. I think Mozeliak a couple of times has, knowing that he's on the way out, has alluded to, guys, my hands have been tied, and I've done what I can do with what I've been given. And you're going to start seeing a lot more fans, I think, this year questioning ownership specifically, not just front office roles. Ballpark
sounds
Village
familiar.
is great. Yeah.
Where have we heard this before? I wonder.
Right. Like, new stadiums are great. Ballpark Village is awesome. As a fan, I love it. Would I go back to Old Busch Stadium to win more? Absolutely. Like you guys would too, right? And it's just, the more we get into it and the more that comes public, the more I firmly believe Mo was the fall guy in a lot of this nonsense. And the DeWitts have a lot of ownership that they need to be held accountable for when it comes to the way this team's been run for the last, honestly, 10 years.
I hear you about old stadiums, man. There was nothing like old Yankee Stadium. That was like
It was the best.
hallowed ground. Like, weird things would happen in the late innings and in the older games and everything. And now it's just this plastic replica for corporate execs that has no history of any kind except for one world championship and a bunch of kicks in the teeth.
Man, we went in 2008 when old Yankee Stadium was ending, and it was just magic. And I was a kid, and my dad and my grandpa took me, and it was just like, I who can live here? Like, I don't want to leave. And
I went twice in 2004, and it just it was nothing. There was nothing like it.
The best. Yeah. I went to the new one a couple years ago, and it was just lifeless. I was like, this is just concrete, and it was not my favorite.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, it's kind of the general consensus for Yankee fans too.
Have you guys been to Busch?
No, I'm trying to hit all 30. So I've been to Lone Depot in Miami, Tropicana Field, Yankee Stadium, Fenway. Been to Kansas City, Seattle, and DC. So
yeah, Fenway's cool. I know you guys don't like Fenway, but Fenway was cool.
I went just across. I lived in New England my entire life. I didn't go in for the first time until 2019. Okay, so I should probably be like strung up off the Charles River Bridge and hung and have my New England card taken from me for not going before that. But yeah, I was at a training in Iowa, and it's like, all right, I'm either going to Minneapolis, Chicago, St. Louis, or Kansas City. And Kansas City was the closest, so I was like, oh, I'm not driving 4 or 5 hours to St. Louis or 5 hours in the opposite direction to Chicago. So
I love Kauffman Stadium. Kauffman Stadium's great.
Yeah, it was a cool time. Their Hall of Fame in that stadium was actually pretty dope. I gotta give it to them.
Really nice, cool. Really nice.
Yeah,
they did a great job.
And the game I actually went to, they were celebrating the Negro League, so they had Sam Allen, they had Pedro Sierra, and one other guy, and they were wearing the Royals were wearing their Monarchs jerseys.
Monarchs.
the Dodgers were wearing the old 55 Brooklyn Dodgers away uniform. So it was pretty cool.
So
pretty
cool.
cool experience.
That's awesome.
That's sick.
Yeah, it was.
Now, as we kind of look at, the future of this team and someone that you kind of mentioned and alluded to earlier, the top prospect for St. Louis, what can you tell us about him and kind of what are your thoughts on his game?
Yeah, JJ Weatherholt, man, a lot of fans are hoping that he makes the roster out of camp. I think, he had the hamstring injury that was unfortunate and kind of held him back in 2024. But I think when he fell to the Cardinals, a lot of people were like, this was a steal. He had a great first campaign down in Florida with the Cardinals, and a lot of people are excited about him. Just watching like his live ABs on Twitter, which is not a great litmus test, but he looks comfortable. He looks like a pro. He looks confident, and not to beat a dead horse, but when you have a log jam on the major league level, providing a spot for a kid like JJ becomes a lot harder. So JJ, I mean, he's going to be in this organization for a long time. He's a stud, and I just know, I mean, he's the buzz in camp right now for sure. I think the two others that you would want to talk about are definitely Quinn Matthews, who had a dream season in AAA last year. I mean, it was not close. He was the best pitcher in AAA last year. It was just the minor league pitcher of the year. And then Tink Hence spent the majority of his time in AA. Both of those guys I could see being in St. Louis this year. I think by the end of camp, if a Steven Matz who's battled with injury time and time again almost every year, I could see Quinn Matthews breaking camp with the big club. Big power lefty strikeout guy, and he's going to be hopefully an elite arm. Tink Hence is probably who I'm most excited about. Flame thrower. He's got the swag. He's just a dude. Like, you look at him, you're like, you can play. You're going to work out. And just thinking that he's battled the injury bug a little bit, but he's healthy, and we're excited to see him back, probably starting the season in Memphis.
For sure. I think that St. Louis has always been known for kind of being able to have those homegrown talents really come and make an impact for a long time there. So definitely some interesting names to kind of pay attention to as we head into this 2025 campaign. Now, in looking at the campaign, and one of the things that we do on this series is we looked for a bold prediction. So what is your bold prediction for the 2025 St. Louis Cardinals?
All right. My bold prediction for the St. Louis Cardinals is that Nolan Arenado will spend the whole season in St. Louis. And I'm not ready to say they're going to win the NL Central, but they will compete for the NL Central title. When you look at the roster and they're running it back and they're giving guys opportunity, it's like, why can't they be around 500? And I think it's going to be 85 to 87 games to win this division. I think the Brewers are okay. I mean, I don't think they're scaring anybody, right? Like, when you guys who were in the World Series last year, when you think of teams on the NL side of the bracket, you're like, yeah, we would pick the Brewers, right? It's like, can the Brewers knock out the Dodgers?
Over the damn Dodgers.
Anybody, right? Like, the Brewers by far probably one of the not as great teams to make the NL side of the bracket last year. So it's really anybody's game, I think, in the NL Central, if a team like the Cardinals can get hot. And it's been a while since the Cardinals have had some devil magic go their way, like as teams in the past have experienced, where for no reason at all in 2006 they win almost every single night, it seemed like, and they go on a run and get hot. So I don't think that's this team. I'm not saying they're going to make a deep postseason run, but I definitely think they're going to be flirting around that wild card line come deadline time.
I mean, they definitely have a chance. Like the Brewers, we just took the Brewers closer from them for Nestor Cortez. So the Brewers don't have a ninth inning guy. The Cubs have an identity crisis like I've never seen. They must be drinking whatever the White Sox are drinking, because they get rid of Bellinger, then they bring in Kyle Tucker, and then they try to who the hell was the last one that they tried to grab?
Well, they just got Justin Turner.
I'm like, what are you guys doing? And then the Pirates, they could be interesting. The Reds really haven't done anything except get Gavin Lux. So I mean, if you guys get hot at the right time and can sustain it, and your young dudes come up and perform the way they're supposed to, I don't see why there is no reason why the Cardinals couldn't be in the discussion for the division title.
Like all the NL Central teams are kind of the same, right? Like they have some young talent that's exciting when you look at like Paul Skeens, and then you have Ellie, and it's a fun division. It's not a super elite division, but it's a fun division. I'll say it might be the most competitive division, where you have 5 teams floating around 79 to 89 wins, and they all could finish in that range. And so it'll make a fun summer, right? Where every game still matters despite the team being 500.
And with the Brewers, they're not going anywhere unless Christian Yelich can stay healthy. That's their biggest key, is keeping Yelich healthy, because we saw last year what happened when he got hurt. That team almost damn near fell apart. So, and the Cubs made it down the stretch too.
Is anybody betting on Christian Yelich at this point? I'm certainly not. I'm not putting a second mortgage on Christian Yelich to stay healthy. I love Christian Yelich. I wish we would have at one point traded for Christian Yelich, but I'm not holding my breath.
Yeah,
for him to be healthy, that's for sure. Now, as we kind of prepped for this series, my bold prediction was that Jordan Walker is going to pace the Cardinals in terms of home runs this year and WAR. I think he's going to have 35 plus home runs and a WAR of 5.7. Now that is predicated on Nolan getting traded, because I think with his defense he would surpass a 6 WAR this year, because I think he bounces back. But if Nolan gets traded, I think Jordan Walker leads the team in home runs and in WAR this upcoming year. I really think highly of Jordan Walker, and I think that if he can kind of maintain himself in terms of his swing path, I think that he'll be a very big threat for that lineup for you guys.
I hope so. We need Jordan to get going. He's a great guy, and I think the whole city's rooting for him.
What is up with this kid? Why can't he just put it together? Like, I don't watch the Cardinals every day, obviously, but he was highly touted when he first came up, and then it just fell apart.
I think it has more to do with the Cardinals' development.
Yeah,
and he's been a kid where, at one point they were telling him to hit the ball, a certain way that was not his natural way, and he just is a young kid who got called up a little bit too soon and got in his own head a little bit. And then I think last season you saw the effects of a not as confident young player trying to hit major league pitching, which is different than AAA. Every time he was sent down to AAA, he thrived. It's just a different pace up here. So I don't know. I can say, like, fans love him and fans are rooting for him. I hope he can turn it around this year. It's just, unfortunately, I see it as being one of those things where he could get traded in a year or two and thrive somewhere else on a team like Houston or a team like the Yankees, right? But I don't know. It really is mind-boggling to see how crazy that whole story has been.
Yeah, for sure. It actually kind of reminds me of when the Phillies were trying to convert Scott Kingery to be like their Ben Zobrist type, have him playing all over the site, all over the place, kind of altering his swing, and then it fell apart because he couldn't do it all. The transition from third base to the outfield for Jordan Walker, then messing with his swing, changing it, having him go back, and then just kind of doing it all during the course of the season with all the eyes on him, to me, it just, kind of stunted his development. But I think that going into this year, if they just kind of loosen their reins and let him go out and play the game the way that he knows he's capable of, I think he could have a big year.
So
Don't get it.
listen to this, just talking on the development piece for just a second. I tweeted this out in the playoffs last year. These are former Cardinals that were playing in the DS. Luke Weaver, Michael Waka, Tommy Pham, Paul DeYoung, Edmundo Sosa, Tommy Edman, Joe Kelly, Jack Flaherty. You had Schulte, of course, managing the Padres. Harrison Bader, Lane Thomas. There's some others, but like there's some dogs on that list where like you just got traded one day and you started thriving elsewhere. I'm not going to say all of the players I just listed were super elite or anything like that.
Not Bader.
To be playing, yeah, not Bader. Yeah, you guys don't like Bader, but we've said the Cardinals.
I didn't mind him. Just can you stay on the damn field, please? Like, is that too much to ask? Everything was a foot problem with that kid.
When you cut the hair, he's like Goliath. When you cut the hair, problems happen. So.
To go to the whole development thing, I don't mean to keep doing this, but like I don't understand why organizations do this, right? Just let the player do what they do. Let them do what feels natural to them. Hell, we saw it with the Yankees with Gary Sanchez. They bring in 5 different catching instructors, trying to teach this kid how to catch 5 different ways, and totally screwed him up. And he was bringing that into the batter's box with him, and then he couldn't hit the damn baseball. Then they ended up trading him for IKF and Donaldson. It's just like, just leave these guys alone and just let them do what they've obviously are good at doing. Like your instructors, your coaches, you're not actually playing the game. Just let these guys just do what they do. Like, please.
Yeah, so definitely an interesting season for the Cardinals to see how they deal with the development of Jordan Walker. Now, as we kind of look towards the organization, towards the team as a whole, what do you think is the biggest question facing the Cardinals in 2025?
I think the biggest question is, who are the Cardinals? What is the Cardinals? Like, what are they trying to be? Is this a rebuilding youth movement or isn't it? And if it's not, there's a lot of explaining to do, because, one thing they couldn't do was do nothing. And that's exactly what they did this year. They did nothing. And I think a lot of fans would have been totally fine winning 75 games this year, winning 70 games this year, had the team said, we're going to get what we can for Ryan Helsley, we're going to get what we can for Nolan Arenado, we're going to get what we can for whatever, and we have a very clear direction that we're 5 years away. And I think fans would have tuned in and rooted for these young guys and shown up for these young guys. I think you're going to see a lot of really hacked off Cardinal fans this year, because when that team starts slipping under 500, it's going to just be like, this is last year all over again, minus Goldschmidt. And, it's just that's the biggest question. Who is the team? What is the team identity? And the Cardinals have always been known for the Cardinal way, the culture. And to me, it's like, where you have no vision, you have no culture. There is no vision for the Cardinals right now. What is the culture then? Is it development? Obviously not. We just talked about that development piece. Is it, free agency? Obviously not. You haven't made those moves. So that's the biggest question for me.
So then that kind of transitioned into the next part of it. What do you think is the biggest frustration?
Everything.
I think everything. Everything. I think the average fan on Twitter would tell you the biggest frustration is John Mozeliak. I have moved past John Mozeliak to the DeWitts, as I've said earlier. I think they care a lot more about the bottom line than they do putting a winning team out on the field. I think when love it or hate it, when you look at the Dodgers model, it's spend money, make money, and we're going to do everything we can to win and trust that the return will be there. They just raised season ticket prices again. They just raised concession prices again.
Oh, it's crazy.
And everything I saw online though was, yeah, but we've got Ohtani. Yeah, but we're signing guys. Yeah, but we're winning. And winning heals a lot of things. And so when you lose, a lot of these things start to come to light. And so I think you can blame Mazalok, you can blame Marmal, you can blame whoever you want to blame, but everything kind of rises and falls at the top. And the DeWitts need to answer for some of this stuff.
And
Yeah.
this is a problem just across baseball. Like, my whole thing is, like, if, like, owners need to realize, right? Your team is your bottom line. Your team dictates your bottom line. It's not like St. Louis isn't like New York. You know, in New York, people are going to go to the damn games whether they're winning or not because it's a tourist attraction. I doubt there's a lot of people kicking down the door to Busch Stadium in St. Louis to go to Cardinals games because they're in St. Louis just for the hell of it. And I really wish the league would crack down on these owners that are just using baseball or sports teams in general as a tax write-off, as a loss. Like, I'm in favor of a salary floor. And people are like, well, then you put a salary cap in place. I'm like, well, you kind of already have that with the 4-tiered luxury tax, competitive balance tax. You already have that. It's just a matter of if you want to go above it or not, and how bad you want to get banged in the taxes for it. And you know, I just hate owners that just abuse their fan bases because they just can, and there's no kind of repercussions for it. I mean, we've seen it with the Steinbrenners, you know, and before that, the Cohen, not Cohen, the Wilpons were a prime example of this. What they were doing in Queens was criminal for all those years, in my opinion. So yeah, I mean, you can get mad at the front office all you want, but when your owner is telling you, no, I'm not doing this, you kind of have no direction or no way to get out of it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I actually today, it's so funny that you bring that up because I saw a headline in a tweet today about Mike Rizzo, the GM of the Nationals, went to Christian Walker's house to try to negotiate a deal. They had a deal in place, and when he called Mark Lerner, the owner of the Nats, he basically said, "Yeah, no, move on." Just kind of. A player that could have helped, especially a young team like the Nationals, kind of continue to progress in that development. And they said no because of the money. So kind of going towards your point, Dave.
Or they're tanking for draft picks now with the new draft lottery. It seems like it's the new mantra. Let's tank for 5 years, pocket all these first-round draft picks, and then be good. Like, we're seeing it right now with the Detroit Tigers. I can't wait to talk to whoever we got to talk with the Tigers about this, because I need to really figure out why this is a new trend all of a sudden. Let's suck for 5 years, pocket all these draft picks, and then go for it.
I think it was tough for a lot of fans, whether they understand the arbitration process or not, to see the Cardinals announce we're going to go to a youth movement, but we're going to take Palante, Donovan, and Newt Bar to court over a little over $1 million.
That's just trash, bro. That's trash.
I was like, this is such a joke. Like, Palante could be your 2 or 3 guy this year, whether people want to admit it or not. The numbers are there. Donovan just won the Heart and Hustle Award. Newt Bar is supposed to be a stud. Like, what are we? Keep the guys happy. It's not $1 million for this year. It's $1 million for year 3 and 4 when supposedly you're supposed to be winning again, and they don't give you a home discount anymore.
That kind of reminds me of like when Evan Longoria signed his first extension with the Tampa Bay Rays back in like 2005 or 6. It was like 5 years and $17 million. I'm like, what? Mm-hmm. I'm like, who's signing that?
He's like,
bro. Yeah. I'm like, guy, this was before they went to the World Series in 2008. I'm like, what is this dude doing? 5 years, $17 million? Really?
Mm-hmm.
I don't get it.
It's insane.
To your point about the $1 million in arbitration, I just don't get it. You got to take them to court, tell them why they don't deserve it, and then hope they don't it's just business. Sorry.
Yeah. After they just spent the last few years losing over and over and over again,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, you know what? I'm good. I'm gonna head out.
Randy Levine did the same thing with Dylan Betances. He had a monster season. They'd taken the arbitration and then went and talked all this smack in court about why he didn't deserve $6 million. And then he goes to the Mets.
I know a lot of people would disagree with us on that, but I think it's a joke.
Yeah,
it is.
And I mean, just kind of harping back to your point, Joe, earlier about, kind of how the Dodgers are going about it may not be, some people's cup of tea, but I always look at it as this, the old saying of high tides raises all boats. When you're winning, you erase all problems. And I think that that's kind of where we see these franchises now. They're not caring about winning. And that's why all of these problems are surfacing. Because think about how long John Mozeliak has been with the Cardinals, how long they had been winning prior to the past couple of years, and how that masked any and all these injuries, any and all these woes and issues and problems. With Yankee fans, we're constantly complaining about Brian Cashman. But as Dave alluded to, realistically, it's more than just Cashman that's the issue. It's coming from the top down. And while the Steinbrenners spend money, while the Yankees spend money and go out and acquire players, it is something that when you win, you mask kind of these issues. And because Yankee fans, right or wrong, were brought up, especially our generation with Jeter and Steinbrenner, where it's win a championship or bust, that kind of doesn't translate to winning baseball in most everywhere else. Cardinals play winning baseball year in and year out the Cardinals way, as you said. That should lead to something a bit more in terms of kind of the leash that fans give the front office and ownership. But at some point, it comes due. And I think that's where Cardinals fans find themselves right now.
It's been interesting offseason too, just seeing how outspoken some of the former players have been. Like, I don't know if you guys saw the Jim Edmonds stuff from a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
And he didn't feel welcome anymore. And like Jim Edmonds, when you talk about, being a kid, when I was a kid, it was MV3. It was Pujols, Roland Edmonds.
Yep.
And everybody had a Jim Edmonds jersey or Scherzi, and that guy's loved by a lot of people. And for him to say that publicly, I mean, I think it was very eye-opening. And I know there's St. Louis fans, some of us are weird. I'll still claim them, but I will say there's a grouping of Cardinal fans that are just pessimistic about everything. They won't agree with anything that you say ever. And the Edmonds stuff came out. It's they were like, oh, that's just Jim, whatever. And I'm like, whatever. He's one of the greatest center fielders of all time. It's we should probably listen to what he has to say.
No, and even beyond that a little bit, a couple years ago, Nolan wanted to get Mark McGwire into camp as a special advisor, and they didn't want to bring him in. One of the most prolific home run and power hitters of a generation, and you don't want his advice? It just,
not to mention a pretty good coach. He had a very
there's
successful
probably other reasons surrounding it, but all Major League Baseball was doing a lot of stuff back in the late 90s to bring the fans back to the game. So, I mean, the fact that that's still being held against him is kind of stupid, in my opinion. But
I know a couple of Yankee fans will agree with me on this one, at least when it comes to steroids. It's just so funny to me how we turn a blind eye to guys like David Ortiz. And
Thank you.
Because he was nicer to the media, but McGwire can't see the light of day. Sammy Sosa can't see the light of day. It's just ridiculous.
The only one that should still have this held against them is Rafael Palmeiro, because he sat there in front of Congress, pointed his finger at them, and said he didn't do anything. And after he gets his 3,000th career hit, all that, the testing and everything came out that he was positive. It's like, all right, that guy is the only one that should have this thing held against them. The rest of them, just you want to put them in their own little corner in the Hall of Fame and do it. But you cannot act like a whole era of baseball did not happen. You just can't. I'm sorry. I just don't agree with it. I used to agree with it. And then as I got older, I'm like, what are we doing? Roger Clemens belongs there. Andy Pettit belongs there. Like, there are so many players from that generation that I don't even go as far as to say A-Rod too. You know, it's just whatever they're doing is just absolutely ridiculous.
When you think of the history of baseball, the summer of '98 will always be a part of that history.
Oh yeah.
And the joy that it brought fans. No professional sport. Well, the NBA is certainly trying, but for a long time, no professional sport, NFL, all of them, has done a worse job of tailoring to their fans and shooting themselves in the foot than Major League Baseball has. It's been crazy with some of the rule changes and don't touch a great thing. It's a great game. It's a phenomenal game, and a lot of the fans like it the way that it is. And
one can only hope this is going to change once Rob Manfred is gone and is done destroying the game, and hopefully the next commissioner will come in and restore it to the glory that it deserves.
Yes, totally agree. Because I fear looking at the state of the NBA right now. I'm like, that doesn't look fun. Like their All-Star weekend could care less. I used to, as a kid, I was like, oh, can't wait for the All-Star game.
Exactly.
But I was like, man, this is stupid.
Basketball used to be such a physical game. Now you like a dude breathes on another player, they throw themselves 2 feet and go, he hurt me. I'm like, you didn't even touch me. What are you talking about? Get up and play. Like,
Not
you
fun.
look back at when Larry Bird and Magic Johnson played. Like, they were punching each other in the face pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, for sure. I think that it's definitely, and when Joe, you bring up the 98 chase, it was something that, especially with the work stoppage a few years before, back in 94, I say all, to everyone that will listen to me, Cal Ripken Jr.'s chase of Lou Gehrig and that home run race is what brought fans back to baseball.
It saved the sport. Single-handedly saved the damn sport.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and probably an unpopular opinion too, is it was a cheaper professional sports event that you could take your family to and afford.
Yeah,
and it's just not that way anymore. I live out in San Diego, and dude, to go to a Pods game out here, you're looking at no less than $100 for a good seat, and it's a hefty price.
Yeah,
I think opening day at Dodger Stadium is like $305 a ticket.
Crazy.
Yeah, you got nosebleed seats at Yankee Stadium that are like $100. Now, as we kind of take a look at the team on field, when you look at the offense, how would you grade out the offense for St. Louis this year?
Yeah, I'm going to go C. I was going back and forth on this. I go also back and forth between being optimistic and pessimistic about this team. I want Lars Newbar to take the next step. I want Nolan Gorman to take the next step. I would like to think that even Mason Wynn gets better. I am cautiously pessimistic about that as well. And so I'll go C. I think that the lineup has its features with Arenado and Contreras, but I think they're very limited outside of that. I think there's still some question marks on whether Mason Wynn's going to be the top of the order guy for the long haul. I think there's going to be a lot of questions about Nolan Gorman coming into the year and if he can hit over 200. So a lot of question marks. So I'm just going to go nice C average here.
Yeah, I have it very similar. I have it at a B-. I think the transition from being a catcher to first base is going to be big for Wilson Contreras' offensive production. I also think that like some of those young guys that you mentioned, the Brendan Donovans, the Mason Wynns, I think they're going to have a good year. I think for as long as you have Nolan, I think he's going to have a very good year. So I kind of have it at a B- right now. Now, as we move into the pitching side of things, how would you grade that out?
Yeah, I would grade that at a C plus is what I have down. It's unchanged, and um, you have guys that can eat some innings. You got some workhorses, and then you have Sonny Gray, and so if the rotation is Gray, Michaelis, Motts, Palante, there's nothing that I don't think you go into a 3-game series against any three of them and go, oh, we're fearing, right? Oh man, we've got to go through that this weekend. Sonny Gray is one thing, but the rest, it's just like hope for solid 6, and if you get it, great. The bullpen, I think, is still elite. I think last year they had a hard time giving the game to them in situations where they were in the lead, but I go C plus.
Yeah, so I have it at a C minus. I kind of say it the same way you do, but I kind of just look at that veteran lineup being another year older as kind of more of a hindrance than a help at this point. So, and seeing kind of what happens with that bullpen that you have, if they start to kind of deplete from that, make trades from that to try and boost the future, that hurts the team. So I kind of have it at a C minus right now. Now, as we get into kind of the final couple topics here, the divisional ranking predictions, right? So Pacoda and Fangraphs have you both listed at third in the division and almost identical in terms of records. Pacoda has 78 wins for the Cardinals coming in third place, and Fangraphs has them with 79 wins in third place. Where do you see the Cardinals finishing in the division, and what do you think that win total actually looks like?
Yeah, again, I go back and forth on it. I see two scenarios playing out. I see one where everyone overperforms and they start clicking and they finish around 86, 87 wins and potentially a wild card spot. I see another where a couple guys get hurt, they're way under 500 come deadline, guys get traded and they finish the season around 75 wins. So I think 79 is a fair. If I had to put my finger on it, I would say I'm going to have them at 81 wins, exactly 500 in second or third place.
So yeah, for win total, I had 82. I think they get just
82.
over 500. I think there's just a lot of up and down in terms of the direction, and I think that kind of leads to a slightly above mediocre team, so slightly above 500. So as we kind of bring it to a close and using the title of this series, what do you believe is the state of the franchise for the St. Louis Cardinals?
I think they're a 500 team. I think they're running it back. I think the roster looks majority the same, and I don't think it's very exciting, to be honest. I don't think it's very flashy. I think it's you can't call it a rebuild because that order 1 through 9 looks very, very similar. You can't call it a youth movement when you still got Nolan and Wilson and a lot of the guys that are still there. You can't call it a contender because they didn't add anybody. So I think they're a 500 team, and I think that's probably the only thing that you can call them. I wish I could say that they were rebuilding or they were in a transitional phase, but they're just not. They're the exact same team as last year, minus Paul Goldschmidt. So,
yeah, for sure. I kind of have them in the same spot. I think that they were probably better off choosing a direction. We had a conversation with Alex Carver of the Marlins, and he was excited because the Marlins finally, made a decision and chose a direction and chose to rebuild. And I think that the Cardinals would have been better served to do either go in and try to maximize what this, quote unquote youth movement and add some veteran presence to that, or, tear it down to the studs and have it be just young guys getting those opportunities. Trade Nolan, trade Wilson, trade Helsley for whatever you could get. Bag of balls even at this point, if you're really going to go with that youth movement, give the youth a shot. But I think that they're kind of, as you said, in that weird phase of not being one way or the other. So I think rebuilding would have been probably the better direction from the outside looking in, but 500 is where they are. So definitely, it's been a fun conversation, and we appreciate you joining with us here. Let everybody know where they can get more content, more information from you as far as Cardinals baseball.
Yeah, I am primarily on Twitter at the Redbird_way, and my little tag is Cardinals Talk. So you guys can follow me there. I'm also on Instagram and TikTok, not as active, but will be once the season gets going. But Twitter is my main jam, and at the Redbird_way.
For sure. So we'll definitely get that plugged in as well into the description of this video here on YouTube. And speaking of being on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button to the Baseball Banter Broadcast and the bell for the post notifications so that every time we drop new content, you will be alerted. If you're listening on the audio side, make sure you leave a 5-star rating and review. And more importantly than all of that, if you want to show support for us here at the Baseball Banter Broadcast, make sure you check out our merchandise shop on Printify, baseball-banter-merch.printify.me. It really helps support the channel as we continue to try to grow and build this community. So we want to thank you once again, Joe, for joining us here. This was a fun conversation about a very interesting team heading into the 2025 campaign.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. It was really fun.
Absolutely.
Anytime.
So we'll catch you on the next video here on the Baseball Banter Broadcast. Peace.